Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tomorrow. It has been an incredible week this week. Almost a decade's worth of spaceflight activities happened all in just 1 week. And so much to talk about, so much to discuss. But first, I did want to go around. Ryan, how are you doing? I'm sure you have been following everything super closely and have been appreciating a lot of the stuff that you've been putting out on Twitter. What a week this
Yeah,
has been. I mean,
it's one of those weeks which is you don't follow any kind of predetermined natural human schedule. You wake up, work, figure out how long you have until the next thing, so you can cram 4 or 5 hours of sleep, wake up, work, and then do the exact same thing for about 5 days straight with the New Glenn scrub and then the Starship scrub and then the New Glenn flight and then the Starship flight, and then we had two lunar landers launching as well. It's like sleep is for the weak. Like, come on, aerospace. Just give us a moment. Like a day off would have been nice in the middle, but no, you just got to go straight. You just full power through the whole week. No rest. I mean, it's
that's
just
right.
absolutely crazy.
Absolutely crazy. And, before even all of that, we had the Transporter 12 mission, which launched 131 spacecraft into orbit all at once, including two orbital factories producing space drugs, a whole bunch of different Earth imaging satellites, a couple of space tugs, including one from Impulse Space, Tom Mueller's company. So much cool stuff on that, and the two lunar landers. And so far, everything seems to be
Is
going well with those.
is that a record?
For amount of launches at once, I am not sure. I think it's at least pretty close. I want to say that the previous record was 137. Let's find out.
By the way, Jamie says I have zero sympathy for Ryan. Zero.
Yeah, I'm sure that Jamie has had a crazy amount of all those sort of starts and stops and hurry up and wait and nope, we're scrubbing for the night. Nope, this is going on. Reset. Okay, so actually, the record for the most amount of spacecraft launch at once, it was actually Transporter 1, launching 143 satellites in
Oh, so
January
close.
of 2021. So, yeah. That was the current record, but I don't know. I was just a little bit more excited about some of the ones on this one. It just seems like there's so much cool stuff that was launching on that one.
Josh
Um,
Collins mentions it included Sat Gus from YouTube's own Mark Rober.
yeah, that's right. And if you signed
I,
up for his
and I
program, you can get your space selfie.
and I love how Mark Rober is known for being a YouTuber, not a JPLer.
Right.
By the way, you've done some incredible things, but the highlight of your career is being a YouTuber.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
Great engineering work. Also, good job with the squirrels. So,
Yes.
right? Like, that's all everybody knows them for.
Glitter
Man.
bombs and social engineering in squirrels.
Hey, that's you could do worse. You could do worse. He's doing really well for himself. Well enough to be able to fund and launch his own spacecraft. It was what, a 6-unit CubeSat, or was it a 12-unit CubeSat? I've forgotten, but pretty cool nonetheless. And I think that there's still ways that you can sign up to be able to get your space selfie. Although I haven't heard yet what their like contact is, if contact has been good with it, and if they've started to do any of that yet or not. I'm not sure. I've been more closely following the two lunar landers that have launched, both the Hakuto R from iSpace and Firefly's Blue Ghost. Both are in orbit right now. They've been able to get contact of both spacecraft. They're doing their checks and doing a bunch of different missions before a little bit later next month they start their different orbital procedures in order to rendezvous with the moon. Blue Ghost is going to get to the moon in about 4 days, and then it's going to spend another couple of weeks or about 14 days, I believe, in orbit around the moon, making sure that everything is going good before they attempt their landing. And with the iSpace lander, Hakuto R, that's the second one. This is a redo because their first mission essentially ran out of fuel for its first landing. So hopefully they have everything worked out this time and that both missions go well. And it makes me wonder. I haven't looked too closely yet into the IM Mission 2 for Intuitive Machines that's launching in a couple of weeks. And it makes me wonder, like, are all three going to be, somewhat close together, or is there a chance that the Intuitive Machines lander might get there before these two? I'm not 100% sure yet. So maybe we can look at that another time. But crazy, crazy stuff that we have those. And then the two largest rockets in the world launching this week with varying levels of success. Oh, man. What do we want to talk about first?
Surprising levels of success. Just a quick note: Mark
go.
Rober's SatGus was built by Terran Orbital. It was a 12U CubeSat.
12 unit. Okay.
And it had S-band and T-Mobile and Starlink for communication.
Something that I thought was kind of hilarious. Some people were chatting in the chat room for this before we went live. And I feel like this comment especially is for Ryan, considering that we had two kind of explosions or at least unplanned things happening. Hoopaball said that Ares 1X never blew up. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But it never intended to go to orbit, unlike New Glenn. So
that's also true.
Yeah. But its first stage was recovered, unlike New Glenn. So there you go.
Yeah. Some of the
did they intend to recover first stage and just didn't, or
you mean for New Glenn?
Yeah.
Oh, they definitely intended to. I mean, they delayed the launch because of poor weather at where Jacqueline was stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. So they, fully intended to be able to land this thing. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case, which many of us were, had felt that way. I love how we were all simultaneously both wrong and right about the New Glenn launch. We thought things were going to go well, but maybe not the way that we thought it was. And what it looks like, I mean, nobody knows for sure because Blue Origin is always secretive about stuff, but it looks to me like when they did their atmospheric reentry burn to be able to slow down and get on target, they did it way, way, way lower than what they should have. They should have done it, somewhere, since everything was in miles, they should have done it somewhere around, 60 to 70 miles, and they didn't actually start that burn until around 40 miles. And it would be hilarious if they, messed up metric systems.
So I've been seeing that.
Photon Empress, yeah. I think they intended to land, but maybe didn't expect to land.
So I've been seeing that being thrown around a lot. The post about, hey, I think they did a mixed metric on that there. And I'm not entirely sure about that because you're basing it off of what the hosts are seeing. You're not actually basing it off of the data that's being seen. And I think it's important to remember that the data we're seeing seem to be the exact same data that the hosts were seeing. But if you were listening to things very carefully in the background,
thank you.
There was, 4 to 5 second delay between what Mission Control was saying and what the hosts were saying. And at a couple miles per second, 4 to 5 seconds, that's a very large amount of distance. So I don't think they hit it entirely where they wanted it at, right? But I don't think they were 20 to 30 kilometers off from where they wanted. So, but I mean, until Blue Origin says anything, we have to wait.
Yeah. And that little bit of audio that we did hear from their mission control was calling things out in metric, kilometers per second and so on. So, why they chose to do it in miles and feet, I don't know, but I'm sure, and I'm seeing a lot of that in the chat room as well, that they are working in metrics. Sorry, I'm fighting with you, Detta. But yeah, so despite that, though, their launch did achieve orbit successfully. It was a very slow ascent to orbit, and we even had a little bit of a drop in the upper stage, which is really similar to like the Ariane 5 and even some of the Atlas Centaur launches, where You get into a good trajectory, and it lowers a little bit as it's the upper stage is burning. But all of their call outs said that it was able to reach orbit successfully, and even trackers on the ground were able to identify it. It did reach medium Earth orbit, and really interesting images too of what looks like a lot of propellant that just are outgassing ice layers that are somewhat floating around that upper stage. But it successfully reached orbit. We haven't gotten any views other than one picture from Jeff Bezos, but congratulations to New Glenn for finally achieving orbit. Been waiting for a long time for this. We were first aware of their orbital plans somewhere around 2011, 2012, finally officially announcing New Glenn in 2016. Joshua Collins says, also, that thing was so slow off the pad, and that was a dummy payload. So with full payload, that thing is really going to crawl off the pad. Absolutely. Didn't even have a mass demonstrator to, have the sort of payload that they, their max payload that they would hope to be able to launch in the future. Drew D.
I kept reminding myself it only looks slow. It's big.
Yeah. I do want to mention for those that may not know, there's always this struggle between metric and imperial units, and it's funny that the United States is basically the only major country that uses imperial units. Most of the math that goes into the physics that create how all this is supposed to work and governs the rules by which you can calculate rates of change and things of that nature. They work seamlessly with metric units, and in order for them to work with imperial units, you have to convert them and then convert your answer. And it's easy to misunderstand if you convert your distance and your mass and your time, and that it's a mess when it's used in an imperial regime. So it's much easier to just use the metric units, because that's what the formulas for all of this were created in and have been used in for all of their history. Turns out, as a U.S.-centric person myself, that the rest of the world is much smarter than we are in coming up with an understanding of the rules by which physics works. So it's easier just to stay in metric, and I can't imagine Blue Origin would go to the effort of converting when the rest of the world understands that it's just easier to do it in metric and are smart enough to figure out how to do that. So I don't think there's much, if any, I would call it a risk that their engineers use imperial units for much of anything.
Yeah.
Much less for all the calculations that calculate and figure all this stuff out.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Space Matt asks, do we think that Blue will ever tell us what happened with the booster? Probably not. They might tell us in the far future. It'll be like, New Glenn 17, and they'll casually mention something during their webcast, and they'll be like, oh, that's what happened to the first one. Okay.
it'll be 4 3-second frames in a highlight reel somewhere 10 years down the road.
Right.
Oh, hey, remember that one time we did this one thing? Flash. Okay, never speak of it again.
Yeah, I doubt they'll go into detail, but of course there is now, as we all expected, there is of course a mishap investigation. I don't know if requested is the right word, but mandated by the FAA, led by Blue Origin into this flight because they lost the booster, and that is not a exception that they have in their launch license. So they lost the booster, which means they failed to complete their mission objective, which means they have to conduct a mishap investigation. So maybe when that investigation wraps up, they'll be like, hey, we lost the booster because of the engine stops working, and then like no more detail. But I'd be quite surprised if Blue gave us any more detail into, like bolt 6 disintegrated on engine 7, which means that the booster couldn't conduct its atmospheric burn or whatever.
I can't wait for the video though. It's going to be great. They're going to be sitting there, both two hosts facing each other, with the view out from their moon base that they've actually already built, as they're getting ready to tell us about
Hey, that's
about what
classified.
happened.
You're not supposed to tell people about that. No, for real. No, I'm just kidding. There are 134 service members, though, who have an off-world classification and get extra hazard pay for that. So, moon base maybe, Mars base maybe, who knows? Oh man, but yeah. Aside from that, though, I'm loving some of your guys' comments. I know that this is off the cuff, but JV said, ran a quick calculation, and I think New Glenn has a thrust to weight ratio of about 1.000003 to 1, which means it's barely able to move. He's kidding. She's kidding, of course.
In terms of probability, you're telling me there's still a chance?
But we finally did see that, and hopefully we will see another launch this year. I'm sure that the FAA and Blue Origin are going to work together to, figure out whatever they need to do in order to satisfy their mishap investigation, and, at least be able to satisfy the FAA that they understand what went wrong and are taking steps to correct that in the future. Whether or not it's going to be launching in March of this year or if it's going to be pushed out a couple of months is anybody's guess at this point. I'm probably not betting for something as soon as March. It's probably going to be a bit longer than that. Even just looking at the state of their next booster, which, they even pointed out in their live stream of, it's sitting right behind us in, various pieces. They could be able to get things together quickly, but I think it's going to be a couple of months longer than that,
Yeah,
regardless of the mishap.
This is a historic moment because I'm going to be even less optimistic than you. I think April is really the earliest, May more realistic in my opinion for the second flight of New Glenn. That's just my gut feeling, should I say. I don't have any numbers to base that on, but that's just my gut feeling.
Yeah. Well, then should we move on to Flight 7, or did you have any other thoughts about the New Glenn launch, Jared, Dutta?
I was going to add one more, which the Psycho one has a really good comment about when they think they're going to fly again, and I definitely agree with that, which is that they need to launch Escapade in a certain time window. So, yeah, get on that. So,
yeah.
Or you could just say, hey, for the Escapade launch, we're not going to worry about the reusability aspect of this. So we'll do what we need to do, but hey, here we go.
They need to be smart about their launch licenses, though, and include caveats for mishaps within a certain scope, so that they can not affect launches down the line if they do have such an event. Mm-hmm. And congratulations to all of my friends at Blue. Well done.
Yes. Yay! Good job, everybody.
Regardless of not being able to recover the booster, this was still a big success for Blue, and we're all definitely rooting for them and want them to push forward quickly and start launching a whole bunch of stuff. So definitely. Well, let's move on to Starship Flight 7, which occurred about 15 hours, give or take, after the New Glenn launch. And man, it's like excitement, incredible launch, incredible catch, and yet super disappointing result with Starship.
All right. What the hell happened?
What the hell happened?
Now what did you do?
So here, I'm just going to add this to the scene here. We had this launch that, right off the bat, we had a couple of things that started, going wrong. Actually, let me rewind this a little bit. We had this flap that was flapping all over the place. Thankfully, this was just something that wasn't necessary. I mean, it's structural, but it wasn't necessarily as important. So I don't think that this thing coming off right here, you can see it was that panel right there below. Their kind of dummy system for the catch mounts. It wasn't actually a catch mount, but they were just having the heat shield tiles to test if they could put that structure in on the Starship. So I don't think that piece of flapping steel caused any serious issues later on in the flight, but it could be related. However, gotta say, big props to Jamie and the Vader team at SpaceX for delivering these incredible, beautiful views without hardly any loss at all. And of course, we can thank a lot of the Starlink systems for that. But I'm going to fast forward a little bit more for the catch, which was successful. It seemed like that this went a little bit better than the first catch on flight number 5. And the reason I say that is because, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I feel like the trajectory was a lot steeper because they were actually trying to, push the boundaries of this and push the flight profile to be a lot closer to what it would be for an orbital flight. So I could be completely wrong about that, but it just seemed like the trajectory coming back in was steeper than Flight 5 and went off perfectly well. And it makes me a little bit sad that these views that we're seeing are going to become routine and boring, and we're going to have, dozens of them happening every single month.
Not boring.
Not boring. Not to us.
By the way,
No,
I love
never boring. I'm sorry.
If you've ever visited an old aerospace, like a rocket museum or something like that, I've had instances where I'm like alone with aircraft or alone with rockets, and the wind kind of like rattles the things that still rattle, and everything just kind of it still kind of has a life of its own. And I love that image of Starship sitting on the chopsticks, just kind of swaying
teetering back and forth.
And
yeah,
I know that whole system is still kind of alive, but I just get that, like, you're in the New Mexico desert and there's a light breeze and you hear
don't be alarmed, it's just a Starship swaying, a super booster swaying in the wind.
That thing is so massive.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Dada, because it just brings this like personality to whatever you may be standing around,
Yeah.
like you're just you just feel like, oh man, this thing is just like being real sassy or something, about it. So so maybe that, the wobbling there was almost like a little bit of celebration wiggles out of booster 14 there for landing. So we'll have to.
That's what I do every time I'm excited.
Yeah, that is indeed as much as you move when you get excited. Dada, I've seen it several times. So yeah. So by the way, I keep forgetting how big all these things are. Like we keep talking about these rockets like they're just like these regular machines, but I wish there was a way that we could quantify just how big these things are to people. New Glenn is friggin' massive. Starship Super Heavy is friggin' massive. Like watching the separation on Starship and seeing Super Heavy flip as fast as it does, and just reminding myself how big the booster is. And I'm like, those are some hard forces on that there. Like I could not sit on that and do that. Like I would throw up or worse. So yeah, it's just so wild, and I love that about it.
Well, and if there's any breeze at all, you know that the chopsticks are doing this anyway.
Yeah, it's a really tall built structure there. So yeah, man, what a wild thing. So.
I thought it was also really impressive that they were able to cut down the time that it took to lower the booster. Ryan, you had some really good posts about that. Last time it was what, 6.5 hours?
Yeah, hang on. That was let me find that really quick. Yep, so the
flight come prepared, Ryan.
6 hours and 9 minutes. This time around it was only 2 hours and 26 minutes, so they've shaved nearly 4 hours off in one catch. So You know,
That's
if they can
really
do that again for the
impressive.
next catch, they'll probably have it back in Boca Chica by the end of the hour.
That's
Almost in orbit.
super impressive.
Almost in orbit, right?
Yeah. Well, we did only have a little bit to go off of the graphic on the right hand corner during the stream, showing the engine started going out on Starship. What is this? What did Drew bring that back up? So you guys are going to hate me for saying that SLS is completely irrelevant and a total waste of money.
No, we've been saying it for years.
Yep.
Yeah. Even with this hat on and this shirt on, I've been saying it for that long. So.
Oh man.
Ika says, "Hey, we can figure out the rough booster mass by its swinging period." Partially,
yeah.
You can certainly figure out its center of gravity.
At least that, yeah. No way of knowing how much weight of fuel is left over, but
you can take a good guess, I'm sure. Make some educated assumptions.
What's a few tons amongst friends?
Well, it seems like, though, I'm not even going to read that. I love Ryan, and I'm trying not to hurt him.
We are disgracing the reputation of this channel by putting utter misinformation on the screen.
Fact checking is dead, Ryan.
We need community notes on YouTube because that's just disgraceful.
Oh, we love you. I love all of you. This is amazing. So it seems like a couple engines went out, and even SpaceX, very quickly, talked about how what they believed was going wrong, and then we got a little bit more information from Elon himself, saying that the preliminary indication is that we had an oxygen fuel leak in the cavity above the ship engine firewall that was large enough to build pressure in excess of the vent capacity. Apart from obviously double checking for leaks, we will add fire suppression to that volume and probably increase vent area. Nothing so far suggests pushing next launch past next month. And of course, that was before some of the FAA comments, but
About that.
That statement makes me feel icky. Vent capacity is flow rate, not pressure. As an engineer, you should know this.
I did want to share this, though, and Jamie might get mad at me for it, but here is some of the footage of what people collected of the breakup of Starship. There were people in the Bahamas on vacation, a bunch of rich people in the Bahamas vacationing, not knowing what was going on, and collected a bunch of footage. And it's oddly beautiful, and you're getting this at right around dusk, and having that beautiful coloration going on there was actually pretty incredible. Some people have put this to some of the Interstellar music. I think one of my favorite comments was, I knew the Power Rangers were real. But I mean, this tells us a lot of what might have happened. I mean, that right there is definitely some sort of explosive event, not just engines going out and it tumbling out of frame. So the question is, was there an explosion because of these leaks and a fire happening, or was it because they activated the flight termination system? Here's an amazing view from an airplane. There's several other views similar to this that were from airplanes, and super, super incredible. I mean, bad for the progress of this space flight. True D. How many people do you think thought the world was ending for about 5 minutes? The audio of some of these clips, that's why I muted these, is definitely that. They're like, oh my God, is that going to fall on us? Are we going to die?
Well, there was some really great audio of it that was definitely like, these are people who are like worth eight figures on vacation looking up, being like, oh my God, what's in the sky? It's just,
yeah.
I just like, want to find like I just want that to be in like a movie about an asteroid impact or something. Just a whole bunch of clueless people just be like, "Oh, look at that! It's so beautiful."
I think NRG has a great
like,
business idea: personal meteor shower as advertised by Resort.
I think we had a group on tomorrow very early on, at least in my tenure, that was talking about doing that.
Oh
As a
yeah,
thing,
that
right?
Japanese company.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
know what happened to them with that. So, because they were going to do it at the Tokyo Olympics as a part of the opening ceremony, and that,
They
yeah, I
probably
don't know
got
what happened to
messages
that.
from China and North Korea that were like, "Don't you dare."
I mean, there's kind of a flawless business model, isn't it? Because your job is to destroy your things. So if you have a RUD, you've successfully done your job,
Yeah, but
even if it exploded accidentally.
how do you get a
You
license
can
for
never
that?
have a mishap investigation. It's genius.
I don't
But
believe in a no-win scenario.
how do you get a license for that?
I
A
mean, the same
re-entry
way
license?
that they got their license for this. And here's the thing that has impressed me the most about this whole RUD thing is how the FAA reacted and how, everything went. Even though this flight didn't go according to plan, the just in case scenario did go according to plan. And that blows my mind. This is something, this is kind of the launch corridor. The areas in red were definitely the most important keep out zones, but the areas in yellow that were near the Bahamas island, and you can see that circled in or rectangled in red there, is where most of the debris they think came down. And there were planes in the area, and the FAA and other aerospace officials were able to coordinate quickly, divert a lot of planes out of the area, and have them circle around a little bit before being able to land. There were couple of planes that were low on fuel, so they couldn't do it for very long. But all of those airline flights were able to stay safe. And even people on the ground, there's reports coming out that some stuff did hit a couple places on the ground. Some of it looks a bit suspect to me. I mean, there was this dude showing a big old chunk of metal that had hit his car, and no dent on the car, barely a tiny amount of of a scratch where the main piece of metal was sticking in there, and seems a bit suspect. There was even a dude claiming a piece hit him on the head, and it's just like, bro, you are not surviving a big old chunk of metal hitting you on the head, coming in at anywhere between
Like,
15 to 40 kilometers per hour. There's no way, man.
You are rich enough. You do not need to do that kind of a lawsuit. So,
Right?
like, you are there. You are in a tropical island in the Bahamas playing tennis in short shorts. Like, you very clearly have money. You don't need any more.
Definitely. And there are pieces that are washing up on the shore in the Bahamas. What is this? What are you sharing there?
Planes coming into the area, like,
Oh, nope. We're just gonna circle around and get out of here. Oh man.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm actually really impressed with the FAA.
Yeah, I did want to point out something because, of course, on the internet, a whole bunch of people were upset about the fact that the FAA was doing their job. Because that's
how dare they?
If there's anything we've learned over the past year, it's that people on the internet, one, don't know how things work, and two, get upset when the FAA does their job. The keep out zones were there for a very long period of time, right? Over an hour. And there's very good reason for that, which is that because the debris really does actually take that long in order to get down. Not everything has a terminal velocity of a human, right? So some pieces of debris literally are going to be fluttering down, and it is going to take an hour for them to traverse that distance from where they may have finally hit terminal velocity. So yeah, that's why it was taking so long for them to do that, because you got to let all that debris get out of the way. Like, you don't want to ingest, a piece of like a floppy piece of metal, the size of a drink or something like that into your engine. That, I don't know if you guys know this, that typically doesn't work well for airliners. So any kind of risk that you can mitigate, you kind of have to do that, especially when you've got a couple thousand people in the air all at the same time. You don't want to take that kind of a risk. So, yeah. Heads up. Just
There
for
may
future reference, if something goes wrong, why does it take why does it take like an hour and a half to let the planes cross? It's because it really does take that long for all that debris to reach the ground.
And the think of the total mass of the vehicle, and all of that mass is now broken up into a bunch of little pieces. That doesn't mean any of them weigh nothing, and it doesn't mean that any of them instantly lose the velocity that they've gained through the 4, 5, 6 minutes that they were being boosted at three Gs. Like the goal is to travel 17,500 miles per hour, and I know that that wasn't their target because they weren't actually going for orbit, but like we can guess that they were going pretty damn fast. And I'm sure you can pull it from the live feed what the speed of it was that last reported, but like all of that, all those parts have mass, and depending
Yes.
on their size and shape, they may if it's a small tiny little high density thing, it's going to keep traveling faster, and if it's a big fluttering piece of steel skin or something, it might have just the right kind of shape to be able to flutter or even coast and glide. And like all of these things have different properties and different aerodynamic coefficients of drag and lift, and like it's madness. But none of them are going to stop. It's not going to just stop and drop. It's just going
Yeah.
to continue in a trajectory based, 21,327 kilometers per hour, whatever that kilometer is.
Put it on a shirt or something. I don't know.
But like
Um,
it's fascinating to watch. And we had the same issue with Columbia when it broke up. Like the debris field was 1,000 miles long.
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, to kind of piggyback a little bit off of what Doug was talking about with Columbia as well, I saw a lot of people saying that there's not going to be much of Starship actually left over after an atmospheric reentry like that. Well, about 40% of Columbia's mass made it to the ground after its catastrophic reentry in 2003. So, no, a lot of Starship 33 did make it to the ground. So, yeah, you do have a lot of mass coming in over this area. So it's not like, oh, we've got like, I don't know, maybe a ton or two of material coming down. No, you probably got a significant portion of the actual mass of the vehicle coming in at those speeds. So
I would say probably most of it, because you have to
yeah,
remember that while NASA says that they recovered 40%, there's probably a handful of a percentage, maybe as much as 10%, that maybe they couldn't find.
yeah, and actually
The
Arvale bringing it up in
the
that comment.
terrain in which Columbia landed was so disparate that they may not have been able to find 10%. But this was a slower speed at a lower altitude, and you get less atmospheric heating, so it would deteriorate or burn up less of it. Also, the construction was much different, because Starship is made of stainless steel, which is a material that's more able to withstand the temperatures of reentry than Columbia was made out of, mostly aluminum. So you've got different properties. I would imagine a good 60% or more re-entered and came back.
Yeah,
even
so
shoot even
it was no small it was no a small harvest of material that was coming down. It was a pretty good amount of material. So, but I also do want to say too something. Just in, I feel like I'm like aiming at everybody in this one. Well, Arvale's really great comment there, which is plenty of Dragon trunk pieces have been found too. I don't think as much burns up in the atmosphere as we tend to think, and that's a really good reason as to why we do it over the ocean, specifically look near Point Nemo in the South Pacific Ocean, where we can try, to be as far away from people as possible. So one of the things I did want to bring up that other people were talking. Oh no! And then my brain just shut down. Why don't you guys talk about it for a second as I
I
try
mean,
to
we even
remember
had
what I was going to
Skylab dropping a
get
ton of
onto?
pieces over Australia,
Yeah.
late 70s, early 80s. I forgot exactly when that happened. But you know, Dutta brings up a great point earlier that the atmosphere does help slow things down. Yeah, it might have been going, you know, over 21,000 kilometers per hour when whatever happened. But you reach certain levels of the atmosphere and things are just going to start slowing down just because of all that resistance. You're going to have a huge amount of slowdown somewhere around 40 kilometers, another very large amount of slowdown around 5 kilometers. And by the time you're at 2 kilometers from the surface, you know, you can, with depending on the piece, just like you said, you know, if you have these kind of smaller, more kind of pointy pieces, they might just knife right through. But if you have something with a large enough surface area, it can have some aerodynamic lift going on and be able to slow down and flutter. But even around 2 kilometers for a lot of stuff, you can get things to be, you know, under 100 kilometers per second for a lot of stuff, which is still major. That's still major, and that still would cause some damage. And there was a little bit of property damage, a little bit, supposedly a couple guys' cars. But aside from that, there's no major damage to buildings. And that's another thing that makes me think that this was more of the flight termination system. And if it was the flight termination system, them seeing that there was a problem and hitting the self-destruct, how impressive is it that it stayed within that corridor that they had already pre-warned about? You know, that if an accident happens, it would be in this area, and it did. So I find that to
I
be
just want to
super
say, though, the
impressive.
language has been a little bit unclear. Well, maybe not unclear, but, you know, SpaceX has said everything stayed within the pre-designated hazard areas, but then the FAA immediately after said that they had to divert flights because they had to activate a debris hazard area, and they only need to activate those debris hazard areas in the event that a spacecraft mishap debris goes outside of predetermined areas. So I personally, I'm not going to like call it 100% everything stayed within the hazard area right now, because the FAA is saying one thing and
Some
SpaceX is
pieces
saying
were out,
another
yeah.
thing. But yeah, but
I,
personally,
I,
in the
I,
event
I,
that debris was outside of the pre-designated areas, personally, I find that quite unacceptable, because that can be really dangerous.
I think that would have to do with altitude or elevation as well. If Starship were traveling on its predicted trajectory, aircraft could fly underneath it at 40,000 feet without issue. But if it was breaking up and there was debris falling, then the space underneath where it was started would no longer be accessible to aircraft. So maybe that's part of it. But I still find it weird that the FAA would clear that space for aircraft to fly underneath an active space flight taking place. That seems a little weird to me.
Didn't in the press release like the day after SpaceX delete a few sentences from it, or was that somewhere else that I was looking at? Was something like that?
I'm not sure
I'm not
about
sure on that
that.
after the fact. I know they updated their website several times in very minor ways before the flight, but I'm not sure about anything afterwards.
Okay, let me see if I can try to find that again.
I think you're talking about this. They're
Yes.
reporting from what happened. I haven't gone through enough of it to like. I did read this right after they released it. It seems like it's the same, close to the same amount of length, but
Let me double check real quick because
I
I know
feel
where
like
it came from.
this is some of the most
Yes.
important parts right here. Following stage
So Michael
separation.
Sheets.
Go
So
ahead.
Michael Sheets, who's the space reporter at CNBC and a pretty good source in terms of things, he's reporting that SpaceX changed the language on its Starship Flight 7 statement, specifically removing the sentence that says that debris fell into the Atlantic Ocean within the predefined hazard areas. So,
Yeah.
to me,
Even
that thickens the plot a little bit in terms of what's going on. But because the FAA is also very much like not saying much. I think everybody's just kind of being very careful at the moment in terms of what they're saying. And
yeah.
I'm confident that it's probably because everybody's lawyers are saying, "Hey, you should be very careful about what you're saying right now." But seeing that get deleted from SpaceX, I don't want to say it doesn't inspire confidence, but it's definitely,
I mean,
it's
this
definitely
is
something.
still up right now, and I mean, it sounds pretty similar to what I remember them first saying, that any surviving pieces of debris would have fallen into the designated hazard area. If you believe you've identified a piece of belief, please call this hotline.
Yep. Michael Sheets has got the receipts, so he's got the screenshots for it. So we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Oh, now I remember what I wanted to say earlier, which is those spectacular videos that we were seeing from aircraft and stuff like that. Those are amazing.
They really were amazing.
Right. Oh, here they are threatening these airplanes and stuff like that, and I just want to remind everybody that these breakups are happening at high altitude and high velocity and are actually quite a distance away from a lot of these videos that are being taken. So things like the fact that the Earth is spherical end up making it look like it's actually closer than you think it is. So yeah, just to let you know, it's not actually relatively close to the airplane. It just looks like it because the human mind tries to put everything into context, and it's also visually it tries to put it into context, and our brains are typically not particularly very well suited at that, or very well at that. So especially with things like spacecraft and speeds and stuff. So
also, if with a lack of mountains, you can see an awfully long ways, and I'm not at all advocating for the flat earthers, but twice, once in Mojave and once in England, while launching rockets for Virgin Orbit, I was at the place where the plane took off and then flew for an hour and then dropped the rocket, and I was able to see the entirety of the first stages burn in the sky. So, a plane traveling 400 or 500 miles an hour for an hour, it's like you can see quite a ways.
Space Matt. Just weird to remember we're all walking around in a thick soup of gas.
Yeah. On a rock.
And the aliens call it us death worlders. You guys breathe oxygen? That's corrosive, right? What?
Debris in the rear view is farther than it appears.
Good one, Pauline. Oh, man. So what do we think? I didn't know Dutta was a flat earther until now.
I'm not advocating. Jeez.
You got another show that you're on that we don't know about? No, I'm just playing.
Oh, did I leave my tinfoil hat elsewhere? You guys can see the hat or what?
Oh man. I mean, if we want to put on the tinfoil hat, do we think ULA had anything to do with this? No, I'm just messing.
The sniper. The sniper strikes again.
Oh man! Apparently, Space Mike and Jamie are getting the same algo suggestions on YouTube. See, we're more alike than you even know. Oh man! So what do we think? Do we think that there's going to be a major delay for Starship, or do you think that things are going to produce earlier on? Because I mean, they already have done the cryo testing for the next Starship, Ship 34. They're already saying that they're going to reuse the boosters, Booster 14, not for the next flight, but for the flight after that. So not for Flight 8, but for Flight 9, hopefully. So yeah, things are moving right along to carry on with the next one. So do we think that there's going to be as big of a delay or not?
I think just like the Cybertruck recall, this will be fixed in 5 minutes with a couple of rivets.
I have to say, they rolled out Ship 34 the day before the flight, right? There's the Ship 34, the Starship for the next one. So there is no way that Ship 34 has any modifications based on the learnings from this flight. Okay, that's just physically, in terms of how time works, that's just physically impossible. So they still went ahead with that cryogenic proof testing, probably just to make sure that the tanks could actually hold up. But they based on what Elon has said and based on what SpaceX has said on its website, they're going to be doing modifications to the ship, right? So that depends how long that takes. I wouldn't be surprised if it then goes back out to Massey's, maybe once it has its engines, to do more cryo testing if that is required to verify the changes that they're making. Of course, they've still got to do engine testing on this ship. If they do the same testing profile they did with Ship 33, they'll do a 6-engine static fire and then a single-engine static fire to simulate that in-space relight, which they didn't get to do on this flight because of reasons just outlined. So I would say that SpaceX has more work to do, obviously, than they previously expected, I should say. I think February might be a bit tight. I think that might be Elon time a bit. Personally, I'm not going to rule the end of February out, but March seems very much a more viable option, in my opinion, considering what they have to do. And they also have a brand new booster that they have to do the whole testing flow with Booster 15. So,
Did they check the O-rings?
Dark. That's so dark. Oh, man. I would agree with that. I hope that it won't be too long of a turnaround, because there were so many upgrades that they had done for this version of Starship that I was really looking forward to seeing how those things would go. And I mean, with especially all the heat shield tiles, they had missing heat shield tiles, and they had a whole bunch of tiles that were made out of different materials to test things out. So I was really looking forward to that. And the change of the forward flaps, they were a lot lighter, a lot less weight, a lot less amount of heat shield tiles to protect their hinges, with them being moved forward a little bit. So I was really looking forward to that, and definitely looking forward to seeing some of the Starlinks finally shoot out of the Pez dispenser. So we're going to have to wait again. They're going to have to do a redo of all that sort of stuff that they were hoping for, plus whatever fixes they might have to do to get things going.
Yeah.
How is it not obvious that you don't have enough ventilation? Well, you vent for a specific flow rate, and when your volume exceeds that flow rate, you don't have enough ventilation.
May I suggest something, which is that
that's a failure mode.
May I suggest something, which is that until you fly, you don't actually know. You know, you could run as many computer simulations and do as many ground tests as you like, but that doesn't mean that you actually know what is going to end up being your problems once you get there. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, did any of this have to do with vibration that wasn't expected? Because, yeah, you could do a wet dress rehearsal and you could do a static fire on the ground, but that's not sitting on top of a booster on your way to orbit before you light up your engines and then have the vibration of continuously firing engines as well. Those are environments that are wildly different from what you have here on the ground. So, yeah, like this is why they're called test flights. So, right? Because you are testing. So, and with the way SpaceX has decided to go about their test process, stuff is going to blow up. Obviously, if it does blow up, we want it to be done in as safe a manner as possible, which I know that sounds very funny, right? If it blows up, we'll do it as safely as we can. But that is the process that SpaceX has chosen with this. That's what they're rolling with. So that is either going to make or break what they're going to do here. I think it's more make, because I feel like, you know, SpaceX is very much the JPL of private spaceflight. Don't bet against them. So, at least in my opinion, with that there. But very important to remember that they still have to do their own investigation to the satisfaction of the FAA and make sure that everything's cleared out with that. Remember, it's not the FAA that's driving this. It's going to be SpaceX's own investigation that's driving it. So if you're going to get mad at somebody for things not going as fast as they should, you should get mad at SpaceX, not the FAA. SpaceX is running it. FAA signs the papers and says, yeah, it looks good. So just a reminder on that front before you run to wherever you want to post that.
SpaceX has to do the assignment and turn it into FAA, the teacher, who has to approve it.
Yeah, so SpaceX writes the essay, right? So before
Yeah.
you jump on Reddit or pay your $8 to yell on Twitter, uh, remember
And the
this
FAA can
is
call bullshit at any time and be like, "No, this is not satisfactory. This does not
yes, they sure
explain what
can.
happened.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah, they
back."
sure can. Yep, go back, redo it, young aerospace company. Go redo that right now. You know they can do that. I would hope that SpaceX. I don't think that's going to happen with SpaceX because there's smart cookies working there, and they're pretty good at what they do. But yeah, we'll have to see what ends up happening. But I'm with Ryan where I think it's going to be until March for them to do that, just because like we got to make sure this is all together. This is I think a lot of people are forgetting too. This is the first flight of the Block 2 Starship, so not entirely completely new, but there sure were a lot of new things on this vehicle. So yeah, not unexpected for this to have happened, but we'll have to see. Also, I don't. We also have a little bit of a curveball happening at the moment as well, because tomorrow the government is officially going to change a little bit.
Yep.
Um, we'll have to see what happens with that as well.
I want to
We'll
highlight. Go ahead.
I was going to say we'll have to see if the buddy system that seems to have developed through whatever means has had it happen.
My buddy. My buddy.
It's such a nice way.
My
of putting it.
buddy and me.
All I'm saying is that maybe one of my favorite Onion headlines I've ever seen was a couple weeks ago, where it said that he's locked the door now that he's going to the bathroom, so he doesn't come inside when he's trying. So we'll have to see what happens at this point with that, because there's a lot of. I mean, I don't know how this is going to go on.
I wanted to highlight a string of comments. Drew D says, I think this is going to be a major delay. The investigation is going to take a long time, but I'm not as knowledgeable as you guys. How did they not see the problem coming on the ground, though? I don't get it. And then let's see.
Because this might not be a problem you see on the ground.
Stan J says there wasn't an obvious problem until around the time they lost the first engine. And Drew says, "How is this not an obvious? Is it not obvious you don't have enough ventilation?" And GTH042 says you're not expecting gas buildup. Ika says it's a huge leak, like an engine supply pipe rupturing is a bit excessive flow rate, so you wouldn't understand it until you have that happen. Six String Simpleton says if the exhaust port is too big, anyone who can bullseye a womp rat can take it out. Duh.
Hey, I have a dumb space weather question.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if anyone can answer this or not, but there have been a bunch of recent coronal mass ejections and stuff that has, is now in the vicinity of Earth. And was that the flight profile for Flight 7? Wasn't that going over the South Magnetic Anomaly? Like, are those two things tied together at all? Like, was there actually an unexpected piece of plasma there, or am I being dumb?
The Bermuda Triangle is just in the ocean, dude.
No, not the Bermuda Triangle. I'm talking about the real science here. Come on. I can't hear you, Jared. You're muted. Still muted, but the way you're just off of your facial expressions, I think that's a dumb question. So
yeah, the South Atlantic anomaly is in the South Atlantic, which Starship never got to. So,
and then Jamie says, "Will everyone make pew pew noises in their head when they see Starlinks deploy from this dispenser?"
Absolutely,
I will. Pauline Brock says yes. JTTV says making ATM noises. I'll be making a spitting noise, unfortunately. I think there's a term for that in recent
toaster
social
noise.
media parlance, but I'm not going to replicate here. I would make more of a retching noise.
I'm thinking I'm going to use the old school Star Trek torpedo sound effect.
I think that the torpedo would work very well for that. Um, wait, I love our viewers.
Oh my God.
Y'all are amazing. I love y'all. By the way, the South Atlantic anomaly is basically above Argentina in that area. So
Okay, so yeah, nowhere close to it. So no chance of any rogue plasma super high up.
no, not particularly. So
You broke me.
you got done on that one. That's pretty good.
Well done.
That's hilarious.
And on that note,
On that note, I think that we're going to go to a little bit more silliness in our members only stream. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to everyone who is supporting our show through our memberships. And without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this. So a huge thank you to everyone who is supporting us. And if you would like to join in on more of our shenanigans, you can sign up for as little as $1 a month to become a member of the show. And we're going to continue the conversation and maybe put on the tinfoil hats a bit more. I can already see the comments. Jamie, who's had the insider information, says it was the aliens. So we're going to dive deep into that. So again, thank you to everyone for being here and watching and for supporting us. I appreciate your guys' thoughts, and we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.